As the evening sun sweeps across Registan Square in Bukhara, it hits a structure that defies standard definitions of a building. This is the Ark, a sprawling, man-made mountain of earth and brick rising from the desert floor. Look at the scale here. A single person walking the perimeter is entirely dwarfed by the sloping exterior. It's a design that forces an immediate feeling of physical insignificance on anyone approaching the gates. The myth behind this massive perimeter is outlined in this diagram. Local legend claims the hero Siavush was told he could only build a city on the land he could cover with a single bull's hide. By cutting the hide into razor-thin strips and tying them end to end, he mapped out the colossal boundary you see today. While that origin story sounds like a romantic fairy tale, the actual structure was engineered from day one to be a looming, silent threat to anyone approaching from the Silk Road. Step through the gates and the massive shell reveals itself as a completely self-contained micro-universe. This breakdown illustrates the operational density within the Ark. At its peak, up to 3,000 people lived and functioned inside these walls. This single footprint housed the royal residence, the complete governance and administrative corps, and the military garrison. Packing the entire brain trust of a massive empire into one target meant the architecture carried a heavy dual burden. It had to protect the emir from the outside world while projecting an image of terrifying invulnerability to the subjects within. That intimidation starts with the outer geometry. These walls rise up to 20 meters, but they aren't the flat, straight fortifications typical of many ancient citadels. Instead, they rely on deep, curving structures known as wave buttresses. From an engineering standpoint, this undulating shape gives the adobe the structural integrity needed to hold back millions of tons of earth, while eliminating the blind spots where attackers could hide. These architectural waves also serve a secondary purpose. As the harsh sun sweeps over the Ark, it creates deep, shifting shadows. This contrast makes the massive walls feel dynamic and menacing. Long before an envoy or a captive even interacted with a royal guard, the building's exterior engineering had already waged a silent psychological war against them. Approaching the main entrance between these 18th century twin towers, the physical experience becomes even more oppressive. Passing through the gates, you are immediately forced up a steep, dimly lit stone ramp. The walls flanking this climb are hollowed out into dark storage rooms and active prison cells. You are effectively walking through a gauntlet of the condemned. The ramp's incline and uneven stones force a slow, deliberate pace. Because the visitor must focus on their footing in the dim light, their head is naturally bowed, transforming a simple hallway into an architectural tool that dictates physical posture before the visitor ever reaches the center of power. Reach the top of that ramp, however, and the brutal mud brick gives way to a shocking level of refinement. Inside spaces like the Juma Mosque and the Kuranishkhana, the reception courtyard, the emir surrounded himself with intricate polychrome woodwork and soaring carved columns. This was the stage where foreign diplomats were received, built to showcase cultural supremacy. Yet, perfectly counterbalancing that beauty was the Zindan. Just steps from the royal court lay this subterranean dungeon, a lightless pit famous for holding political enemies and doomed British officers. The emirs maintained control for a millennium by balancing these two extremes, the seductive display of wealth and art set directly against the cold, ever-present promise of the dungeon. That carefully constructed illusion of invulnerability held until the arrival of mechanized warfare in the early 20th century. In 1920, the political heart of the Ark stopped beating. Facing a superior force, the final ruler, Sayyid Alim Khan, fled the city, abandoning the fortress his ancestors had held for centuries. Shortly after, the Soviet Red Army unleashed a massive aerial bombardment. The assault obliterated the royal library, the harem, and the wooden palaces, turning the luxurious core into ash. The very wooden structures the emir used to project his status became the highly flammable fuel that accelerated the city's destruction from above. Today, the Ark exists as a literal cross-section of its own trauma. Miraculously preserved outer walls wrap around a gutted, skeletal interior, laying the city's historical fault line bare. Looking at this panoramic stretch from the outside, it resembles a fossilized giant resting in the modern landscape. The empire is long gone, and the absolute power of the emirs has been reduced to dust and archival photographs. Yet the physical shell continues to command the square. It remains a study in the architecture of intimidation, showing how power, when woven into stone and shadow, continues to exert a presence long after the empire itself has vanished.